third world internet. So, yeah.
Yeah, we all suffer from it, so it's okay.
Oh, is it like that over there too? Because you guys are like way more advanced than us now.
Well, I'm living in the hills right now. We've moved from Mumbai for a couple of months. Yeah. So basically, I'm up in like the equivalent of a Sri Lankan tea hill station down in Tamil Nadu.
Oh, all right. Okay. You do know that I live in a mountain too, right? Have you seen any of my...
So that's where I'm staying right now. We decided to move here since we got the high-speed internet connection up and running.
Okay.
I was living in the city through a pandemic with two small kids.
You did mention that you guys had an apartment somewhere in the city, right? During the first lockdown or something.
Yeah, we live in Mumbai. Lucky for me, I live in a nice part of the city, actually.
Okay.
So there's like, it's green around us, which is rare for the city.
True.
And we don't have like any other building near us. It's like kind of the strangest bit of Bombay.
Okay. All right.
Because we kind of cut off from everything else, but at the same time, we're right in the middle of South Bombay.
Okay. And now?
So basically, I grew up in this part of the world. So it's called the Nilgiris. And it's like a sort of a collection of hill station towns. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
And I grew up in this town over here called Uti. And my husband's family happened to have a home over here in a town called Kunur. Yeah.
All right.
We decided since the home was here and nobody was staying here, we got onto we braved an air travel with our kids.
Okay.
Got onto a plane, booked a whole row, and came here. And we've been parked here now for almost a month.
How's it going for you?
It's actually not bad because work is online, Ray. We can be anywhere as long as the internet works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So literally, like, it was crazy. Like before we decided to get on the plane, I'd hardly been out of my house. We only like once a week would go and see Jihan's aunt.
Okay.
And apart from that, we didn't go anywhere. And Bombay is the kind of place where you can get groceries and things to your doorstep.
Delivered, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So everything is home delivery, so you don't have to actually step out.
How about your current?
How about what?
Your current location when it comes to
here, it's fine because numbers are really low in this part of the country as well. Yeah.
All right.
Also, just the hills, people are much more spread out as well. It's not like how it is in the city where everybody is living really close together. So apart from parts of the town which is crowded, there are cases, but it's much lower than anywhere else. I suppose it's what you would call it's just above a green zone, I suppose.
All
because there are cases, but it's not it's negligible. It's not anything compared to urban India.
Okay. What's the weather like over there where you are right now?
It's cold. It's really cold today.
Are you you like cold weather? Or?
I've got like a polo neck on.
Yeah.
Do I like cold weather? I'm one of these that I don't mind either way.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, too much cold weather can be depressing.
Yeah. I like the cold weather though, because I like to wear hoodies and stuff. So
yeah. Sure.
Very childish, but yeah.
No. I have much more of a winter wardrobe than a summer one. So yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. So thinking of how to introduce you, you do multiple things. You're like an artist.
Multiple things.
Yeah. An artist, puppeteer, educator, mom, photographer, editor, illustrator, designer, actor, librarian.
Yes. Yeah, managing to do them all. This was my problem, I think, when I was younger, because everybody kind of said that you have to do one thing. And yeah, I mean, but that's especially when you come from India or you come from anywhere in Asia, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, we have very similar cultures, so
Yeah, exactly. So parents and everybody who you're connected with are like, you can't do more than one thing. You have to concentrate on one thing and you have to do well at that one thing. And this was a big conundrum for me because I had so many different interests. And I'm actually quite good at everything I put my hand to, you
True.
know? So
Yes.
it's not like I'm bad at it, right? So so I had a lot of trouble trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do with myself. And I mean, even that part of like leaving New Zealand and a film course halfway through was part of that. Of course, I had other issues with my family and things like this, you know. But I think somewhere I started to like really ask myself what mattered, what mattered to me and what kind of made a difference to me. And where was I the happiest, right?
Okay.
And that led to thinking about, I started to work with children. And I actually got a job working in a school teaching drama.
Okay.
Right. And at the same time, I was actually teaching, A-level art as well. Yeah.
All right.
And I just felt that I'm actually a very good teacher. Yeah. And I can get anybody to understand things in a way that not many can. And
I can see that because I've been following your library project. So yeah, my kids love your character too.
Thank you. He loves anybody who loves him. He's a bit of a narcissist.
We'll talk about him in a while. But so what happened after you left New Zealand in 2006? That was a sad time. I was very sad when you left, like the entire gang.
Yeah, it was not a good time in my life, actually. I had a bit of a nervous breakdown, to tell you the truth, as well, at that point in my life. So many things had happened. I'd dealt with a lot of loss in my life, a lot of trauma, and I hadn't actually dealt with it properly.
Okay.
I actually had to come back to India and do a lot of, I suppose, healing myself in some way. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
I came back to my mom's home, and for a few months, I was like living through my own little pandemic, but it was going on. A lot of it was happening in my own head. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did go to a counselor, and I started to get help for myself. At some point, of course, my mom and my sisters, said that I should see a psychiatrist, and there was medication involved in all of these things. But I decided, I can actually do this for me in a different way, in a healthier way.
Okay.
Yeah. And I started to actually see a counselor. I started to change small things every day in my life. Yeah. And around that time also, I actually got a job working in ad films in Bombay, in Mumbai.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took the job, and it was a crazy, mad sort of a job where I would be, so it was a small ad film company, and we worked production, but we did everything from pre-prod to post. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the span of one day, I would be doing pre-production and sitting and making dockets and going through, stuff with an art director. And then I'd run across to a studio and do an edit, like sit in the edit suite with the editors and do the edit for another ad. Yeah. And I'd be sitting there till late in the night, sometimes 1 a.m. And then, 1 a.m. I'd lie on the couch for like 2 hours and get some sleep. And then, straight away jump either into my car or onto a train. And then head to one of the studios, which is, way up in the north in a place called Andheri. Yeah. Okay. And Andheri East, I'd be like, into a studio for shoot, to set up for shoot by 4:30 or 5 a.m. So literally it was this crazy life. I lived on very little sleep, mostly, propelled by lots of cigarettes and coffee. Not the healthiest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was underpaid, but yeah, in some ways it was wonderful because it meant I really worked really super hard, and that meant I didn't really think about anything else apart from the work. And I learned a lot on the job as well, as you do in production, right?
True.
You learn to really problem solve on your feet, and you learn a whole lot of skills that you wouldn't anywhere else.
Very
right?
true.
But then in the same year, so that would have been 2007 July, yeah. My flatmate, so I stayed in this 1-bedroom flat with another woman, was working with she was an editor of like a sort of a weekly part of a newspaper, yeah.
Okay.
Like a supplement. She used to edit one of their supplements. And somebody had written about something called the rickshaw run, yeah, which was an auto rickshaw rally. And she was like, do you want to do this? Because they're looking for people to do this right now for the next one. So I said, yeah, why not? So then basically I asked my boss, can we do this? Because it was one of these things where you had to raise money for a children's charity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you bought an auto rickshaw and you drove the auto rickshaw from Calcutta all the way through West Bengal into Nepal, across Nepal, back into India, and then into the hills. All of this is kind of, sort of down from the Himalayas a little bit. Yeah. So into a place called Manali. And then that's where the race was supposed to end. But of course, my teammates decided we go further into the Spiti Valley.
Okay.
We had quite a few experiences. But what that did to me was when I came back into the city, I found it very hard to be in the city because I'd just been on the open road, kind of living this, crazy life on the road.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I thought this is not really me to be working these mad hours in a job that I don't seem to be going anywhere. Yeah.
True.
I'm doing everybody's dog's work, but I'm not really climbing anywhere. Yeah. So I decided, okay, I need to take some time to rethink. Yeah. And I quite literally got into my car, and another friend of mine had, her dad had showed up in Mumbai, and he said, I have this property, which is pretty much in, the middle of nowhere, Tamil Nadu, which is in South India. Yeah. And he said, would you like to run it for me? Because people come and go on this property, and it can be turned into a guest house when, we have enough cottages for it to run as a guest house. And this town is quite a strange little place. It's called Tiruvannamalai. Yeah.
Okay.
And basically there's a mountain over there, and everybody thinks that this mountain is the embodiment of Shiva as a column of light. Yeah.
All right.
So a lot of pilgrims and all come there as well. And the other thing is a lot of, in the 70s, the hippies who were running away from stuff. So they were trying to evade the law in other places. They ended up there.
Okay.
And then the main thing is that it's an ashram town. So you had a guy called Ramana Maharishi. Yeah. And a lot of people came because they believed, in whatever his teachings were. Yeah. So you have the ashram over there. So it's this strange mix of...
If I interrupt you for a minute, a second, what is an ashram town? I have a vague idea, but I'm catering to a diverse audience. So it'd be nice to hear it from you. Yeah.
Yeah. So an ashram, over here, basically you have these spiritual leaders. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if now you could necessarily call him a leader, but what tends to happen is the people around them decide that this person is worthy of following. Right.
Okay.
It's borderline being on a cult, but I suppose it's less, I don't know what the word is, a bit tamer than a cult.
Okay. I watch a lot of Sadhguru videos. I really love his channel. So
it's a way of life that people are prescribing to, but it's around one person, right?
All right.
And this person is almost like a god figure in some ways, right? So this whole ashram is around this man called Ramana Maharishi, who obviously he's no longer alive. He lived a while ago. But his teachings are very much alive, and the people who follow him keep all of that alive. And there's various things that take place in the ashram that are connected to him. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically it's a collection. I suppose the ashram itself is a collection of the devotees of that person. Yeah.
All right.
And they live together. Each person is designated work, which they call seva. Yeah.
Okay.
So you work for free, and for your work, you're given a place to stay. Right. And sometimes they have deals like their ashrams have guest houses as well. And there's different ways of like doing this. But very often the people who live there, they work there and they keep it running. Yeah. And so they stay for free, essentially. They get fed for free, and they stay there for free as well. Yeah.
All right. So,
but you have people from all over the world, right? And then you have like the various other people who want to come there because they want to learn about Ramna. You have all kinds of other little movements that have started up in this particular town. It seems to be a center for, I don't know, some kind of spiritualism. Yeah.
Okay.
Good, bad, and ugly, all of them.
All right. If you could elaborate, like what's good, bad, and ugly?
Some of it, it's all a little bit subjective, isn't it? But like of it, as far as I've been around all kinds of people, Ray, and seriously, people come to quote unquote find themselves. So. I like in my experience, you're the only person who can the only place you can find yourself is with yourself. Yeah.
True, I agree.
There's no going somewhere. There's no there's no running to some place. And there's nothing, there's nothing in a scripture or a teaching or, something somebody else said. Yeah, it can like help you and guide you maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
But unless you find that place within yourself where you're comfortable in your own skin, there's nothing else. So,
all right. Okay.
Yeah. So, I find that a lot of these things prescribe to people who, for whatever reason, people who are searching, right? And I guess we all are on some level. But there's a lot of advantage taken of the fact that people are searching as well, right? And a lot of people can either try and make money off that. That's one thing, or they like the power of being able to make people follow them, right? So there are quite a few of these movements around that town where you have now small kind of figures who have their own followings, big and small. Yeah.
All right.
And also it's a lot to do with their own egos. So they enjoy this feeling of being a god man or a god woman of some sort, right? And being followed by people. So that happens a lot over there. But one of the things that I did, and I suppose that was kind of the start of me starting to think about the sort of person I am and what I want to give back to everybody around me. Yeah. Because that is a big part of who I am. Yeah. It's a big part of my family also is to always, be open to, giving back to whoever's around you in some way. Right? So I started this place, which was a guest house, and I started a small restaurant also. And it's because this town is very divided into different sort of groups. Yeah. So you have the foreigners that come in as both tourists and as spiritual travelers or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And some of them are settled there. They've been there for years and years, but they kind of keep to themselves. Right. Okay. You have your sort of ashram Indians who think that they know better than everybody else and that they are the most spiritual people on the planet. Yeah. And they also have their own little clique and they stay together. Yeah. And then you have, your locals. Yeah. And the locals are there. They live. This is their town. Right. But what happens is restaurants, funnily enough, are also divided into these groups. Yeah? All right. You can see that quite clearly. Like the foreigners all go and eat in one place. Yeah. These ashram guys will go eat in one place. The locals will go and eat in one place. Right. Okay. So I opened this place and said, everybody is welcome. Yeah. And the rule is that everyone can sit at a table together. Yeah. We're going to keep the food really cheap. So we keep the food at cost price. Yeah. Okay. Whatever it costs us to make the food, we will put it out at that price. Yeah. And it was all vegetarian. So it doesn't offend anybody as well. Yeah. And then we made this wall between the kitchen and the sort of dining area And on the wall, we put all the godmen and all the god women and all their photos,
All right.
to kind of say like everybody's welcome, whatever you believe in, and so it became quite a thing. Like people would come into the restaurant and they'd have their own little picture of somebody that they believed in, or something, or a little prayer or whatever it was, and they would put it on the wall.
Okay.
And this place, I stayed there for 8 to 9 months. I ran this place. And then my now husband came through because I had met him earlier when I'd come back to India. I had been part of a theater festival, and that's where we met. So he basically came through and he was like, "What are you doing? This place is in the middle of nowhere." Okay. It's not really connected to anything that will help you, get anywhere with your life. Like, what are you doing? So he didn't quite understand it. So I was like, okay. And then I suppose that made me think. And then at some point I said, okay, maybe it's time for me to go back and try and, pick up things again. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I headed back to Bangalore where my mom lived. And I got a job teaching drama and art. Yeah. And then unfortunately what happened was, I did that for a bit. And the school where I was teaching had a lot of financial problems. And the first thing that they cut from their budgets was the music, the drama, and all of the arts. Yeah.
All right. That's what happens.
So that's what happened. Yeah. And then it was a very clear sign for me because I said, okay, there's something really deeply wrong with us culturally. If this is what we're killing, the first thing that we kill when we have any kind of problem is the things that actually make us feel the most alive. Yeah.
True.
So I started to really question this, and I started to look at how education is also structured, right? And that's when I decided, okay, I moved back to Bombay, and at this point, my now husband and myself were a little bit more serious about things. So I moved in with him, and we started this company where basically I was going into 2 schools and teaching drama as a subject.
Okay.
And then that grew, right? So we had a whole lot of slowly we had a lot of instructors going into schools and teaching drama as a subject. Yeah. But there was still this feeling of, we can do more. Yeah. This is not quite what we want to do because it's still kind of pigeonholing the creative arts and people's creativity into a place that is dispensable, right? Because the schools are not giving this the importance that it needs, and it's not actually affecting education in a way that it should.
All right. So I want to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Like for us in Sri Lanka, when we look at India, we see India as a nation that supports art, largely, because over here, it's pretty bad. We don't get much support for art. So, but when you're saying this now, I'm kind of wondering, so what's the relationship between India and art?
So it's not a good one anymore, right? Things have changed this year. I'll get to that. But seriously, I think one of the main, if you look at schools, right? Now, I've worked in all kinds of schools during my career, and I've literally worked from kindergarten to, grade 12. And I've taught at a low income school that is government run, and I've taught at your IB school, which is for your privileged children. Yeah. And I've taught in everything between that as well. Okay. So if I had to look at a very average school that, your working middle class person would send their kid. Yeah. You're looking at about 2,000 students in the school. Right.
Okay.
And in that, for those 2,000 students, you might have a lot of maths teachers. You might have a lot of language teachers, right? Across the school. And you'll only have one art teacher for all of these 2,000 kids. Okay.
All right. So, okay. It's
if
not that
you're
different.
lucky. Okay. And that's painting and drawing. Right. There's not even a thought about if you're maybe in quite a special school. Yeah, maybe you might have a drama teacher. And even music it might be there. Mostly it's something you can do. Your parents will put you in some class outside of school, right?
Okay.
So this is kind of how it's seen. It's not like it's priority. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when that's why we started to look at how can we do this in a way that, it's not like this tiny little pigeonhole for the arts. Yeah. And when I talk about the arts, I'm actually covering even film now is part of that, right?
Okay.
Because there's a way of approaching it and thinking that could start in school. Yeah. Because this idea of even being able to storyboard, being able to story tell, right? These are all skills that start when you're a child.
True.
So we started to really look at, okay, what can we do? So we came up with, we started working with these two German women. And in Germany, they have a really wonderful system of integrating the arts into the curriculum, and especially theater, right? Because theater is kind of a place where all the arts can meet as well, right? You can use your skills from music and visual art, and you can use many different subjects as well. And it's a place where a lot of things can naturally integrate. So we started to look at it as not just a way to make plays, right? But a way to learn. Okay. So we started to, see how we could actually teach people across curriculum. And actually teach, get a maths or a science teacher to use drama-based exercises to deliver their content. Yeah. So we started working and training teachers to do this. So we have now these certificate programs, which kind of started off being these 2-year programs in the physical space. Yeah. And we would actually go into the school, do workshops with the teachers, and in between the workshops we'd go in and actually see how they were implementing the work with their classes. Yeah. And they were teaching everything through drama, and we're working mostly with primary school teachers, but we work with middle school teachers as well, and pre-primary teachers. Yeah. And they were able to use these tools right across age groups, right across subjects and curriculum. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was something that we were successfully being able to do. And then the whole idea was, over the course of 2 years, you shift the way, everything is done in the school. And also you have wonderful kind of community building interactions that include parents as well. So you might, like, at a presentation day, the kids would do like a museum, which use their bodies. Yeah. And they would create exhibits that came to life. Yeah. So the whole school, it's not like it's just a play on stage, but the whole school becomes like an exhibit that you can walk into. Yeah. And you can interact with stuff like, Ray, you might be in grade 7, right? But you're standing there as part of an exhibit on, I don't know, the Indus Valley civilization. When I walk past you, you've got a little tag on you that says pull here. And I pull it, and you come to life and you tell me something about the Indus Valley civilization, or you act out something. Yeah. That allows me a little window into it either. Yeah. So it's quite a lot of fun for parents to like see that and interact with it as well. So we were doing these sorts of things and having these things happen at schools as well before pandemic kind of hit. Yeah. And then the pandemic hit, and we were like, oh, what do we do? Because everything that we've ever done requires us to work with people in a room, right? So yeah, and at this point also, there was also a feeling, because my husband had run something called the Drama School Mumbai. Yeah.
Okay.
And the two companies that we have are sister companies. So basically the company that I am part of is called Theatre Professionals.
Yeah.
And we gave birth to the Drama School Mumbai. Yeah. Which is a not-for-profit. But the drama school is a professional theatre making course. It's a 1-year theatre making course, right? So people who have finished their undergrad, they do the course, right?
All right.
And so because of that, and I actually happened to also teach for a little bit at the drama school. So I got to know the last batch quite well, right?
Okay.
And even previous batches, I know a lot of them personally, and they're actually really good performers. They're amazing storytellers. And I suddenly had access to this whole community of people that could do something, right? together with my colleagues, I just had this idea. I said, listen, we're all sitting at home, and right now all of the kids are also at home, right? There's no school. I mean, across I don't know, Sri Lanka, are the kids back at school as yet, or have schools?
Yes, some parts of Sri Lanka.
Yeah. Yeah, so across the length and breadth of India, not a single school is functioning right now, right? And if they are, they're doing it without anyone knowing, because it's actually against the law to open school right now. Yeah. So, I mean, there's no child going to school. And so I said, okay, how can we manage to do something? We have no money. We have nothing to actually, pay with. So let's see what we can do for free. So I had this idea. I said, when you go into school, one of the main parts of the school that keeps it alive and is kind of the heart of the school is the library, right? And the library is a place where, whether I want to pick up a book on some kind of sports, or if I want to pick up a book on science, or if I want to just go in there and get a novel, or I want a picture book, I can go in there and take it out, and it gives me access to things across subjects. So then I said, we should start something that's similar with videos for children, which gives them, videos across subjects, but obviously it has to be online. So then we said, okay, what can we do for free? And really we said, okay, we can, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram are free. We don't have to spend money to set up a site. And we can just start posting things. And that's how it really began. And first I was just tapping into this community that I know. And then slowly people just started to also come to us and say, we've got these videos. And then I have, and amazingly 4 other women said, we'll help you run it. Yeah. And they all work with me. They happen to be my colleagues. They're also drama instructors, working with teachers and working with children as well. Yeah. And so 4 of them said, we'll help you run it. So they do most of the running now of it. And we keep it alive. We're hoping that, eventually when we go back into the physical space, maybe it becomes something that we can run festivals for children, and, pull people in and do things with it, because we have such wonderful contributors who do things. I've got people who have done capoeira, for example, and
really?
we've got a guy who does little videos on there, and then
capoeira.
We have storytellers, a lot of them. Then, of course, I've got somebody who's interested in moths and butterflies, a lepidopterist, who's kind of given us content. We've got farmers who've done something for us. We've got, all kinds of different people, and they continue to do that. But I think one of the main prerequisites for any kind of video that we post is a certain sensibility to children, where you think, the way that it's presented to them, you're not treating them like they're stupid. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we have, we look at before we actually post the content. But we actually work across any subject. And videos are anywhere from 1 minute to, I think our longest one is 27 minutes or something like this.
Okay.
Yeah. And the aim is to post 1 video a day. And then, of course, because we had to fill some gaps, I also happen to work as a puppeteer. So one of my colleagues was like, okay, listen, Tuesday, because we used to have quite a vibrant character called, he's an actor called Tushar Matthew. But Tushar made this character called Bumbles the bear, and it's beautiful. I mean, he has almost like a circus costume. Paints his face in white, and he's got a big beard, and he tells stories for us. He did a whole storytelling series, and it was called Time Books with Bumbles. Yeah. And so then Tushar said, listen, I need to do another role, and I need to shave off my beard. So I can't do Bumbles for you for a while. Okay. And so I said, okay. And he's like, also, I think I need a break. I've done quite a few of them. So I said, okay, fine. And then my colleague was like, listen, you've got this puppet and you haven't taken him out, and you haven't done anything with him for a while. And you used used to do a lot of performing with him, actually, for both adults and children. So I do 2 separate kinds of shows. My adult show is not so child friendly.
I don't think that I've seen your adult version.
No, I've not actually put any of my adult content.
I want to see it at some point. I'm an adult, so.
I mean, he's not. Yeah, you're an adult, but like seriously, Francois, when he does shows for adults, is not his mouth is not so sweet. Let's say.
Okay, but you got to promise me that you're going to share it. I mean, at least like a personal link, so I could just check it out.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing online. I've got nothing online that I've had to like actually create something and put it up there. But if it happens, I'll let you know for sure. I think he's more of the stand-up, space. So it has to be kind of interactive rather than recorded, because then it kind of feeds off whoever's in the audience as well.
Is he with you right now? Can we see him? Just a little glimpse?
No? I'll have to take him out. Hang on a second. So he lives in a suitcase. Yeah. So will you I'll pull it out from here.
Cool.
So I actually made this guy.
You made him you made it yourself. Wow.
Yeah, I made him.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. So most of the time, if I'm working with him, then I don't come on screen, because then it kind of, you lose the illusion of him talking. Hello, Ray. How are you doing?
I'm good. My kids are big fans of you, by the way. They haven't missed a single episode so far. Yeah.
Oh, I am so happy to hear this. And I take it that you live in Sri Lanka.
Yes, I do.
What a nice place to live, huh?
Thank you.
What a great place. And what is it that you do, Mr. Ray?
I'm a filmmaker and now podcaster. So, yeah.
What is this podcasting? Is it a bit like what I do?
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah? And does it also have video?
Yes. What I do is a video podcast. So I cater to both formats.
Video podcasting. I must explore this medium.
You definitely should.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just learning how to use the record button. It's so exciting. It's red and big. I love it.
Nice.
Okay. Let's say bye to you.
It's nice meeting you.
She keeps me in this box, man.
Well, I'll try to talk to her and see if you could upgrade your living space.
Yeah, it's like really musty in there. I hate it, yeah. I mean, come on. Seriously. If anyone should be put in a box, it's people, not me.
You're right.
See you, man.
Nice. See you. It's good talking to you. Thank you for being in my show.
Yeah, it was awesome. I like your red background, by the way.
Oh, cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like a glow around your head.
Yeah, it's the Martenstyn encounter. So.
And you got some action figures in the background also.
Yeah, I'm a geek.
I saw that. I saw that you also have a mug with Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, grown up holding like a mug, like a kid's mug. Yeah.
Well, Spider-Man is for everybody. He's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, man. I'll see you soon.
Cheers. It's good talking to you. See you next Tuesday.
Yep. Say hi to your kids, okay?
Will do.
Au revoir. So yeah, that's the thing that.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, I actually I didn't feel like I was communicating with you.
No, it's not me.
It's like a split personality.
Yeah, it's kind of like I tell my son as well. He's like, "Isn't it you that like?" I was like, "No, Francois has his own thoughts. I don't have thoughts for him."
Hell no. I mean, I've been. We've studied together for a while, and I kind of know you. I know the 2006 version of you, and I didn't feel that I was I was talking to you. Just
no, that's not
for 5 minutes. Yeah, pretty cool and scary.
My little one, I have a 2-year-old and she's freaked out by it because she sees me like operating him and she'll just start crying. She's just like, oh no. Can't take it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But I've been doing we're doing a play online for kids as well. So that was part of like my team got together, which was a lot of fun actually. And we decided to do a play. We had to pre-record the actual play because we tried it live on Zoom and oh my God, it was a disaster.
I can imagine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, complete disaster. So we were like, dude, this is never going to work. So what we did was we all pre-recorded and cut it together, but we made it look like it was done on
live.
Zoom.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And then we do a live interaction at the end where the kids get to meet us all in character. So we put on our costumes. Okay. And I play this crazy character who's called Mr. Mooch Wala. And mooch in Hindi means mustache. Yeah.
Mooch.
So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did I say it right?
Yeah, mooch. You've got a little mooch. Yes. So Mr. Moochwala, he has a mustache that is actually from here to here. And I've made it out of 2 ladles. Yeah. And quite literally, it's like 2 cooking ladles, these 2 black cooking ladles. And it's like across the screen. So it actually fits the Zoom screen perfectly. All right. And yeah, come on and like talk to the kids as this character. And again, it's not me. So, yeah. But it's been pretty fun to do that because the last show that we did, basically like our entire audience was on mobile phones. Yeah. So we had like 100 kids and you could see like in the background, like their houses were tiny or like, made out of tin or like, they didn't have proper walls and stuff, but they were sitting there with their mobile phones, in their tiny little house.
Nice. Okay.
And at the end of the show, we have this interactive bit with them. All right. And it's all about basically the show is called When Ali Became Bajrang Bali. Okay. And Ali is, if you know anything about India and how the climate is right now. So Ali is a Muslim name. Yeah. And Bajrang Bali is the name of a Hindu god, Hanuman, who is the monkey god.
We're familiar with Hanuman.
Yeah. So basically it's about how this little monkey called Ali becomes, he pretends to be Hanuman and scares off Mr. Moochwala, who's going to chop down the tree with his mechanical machines and his engineers. Yeah. And so then he starts to visit this Moochwala dressed up as Hanuman. Yeah. And then changes Moochwala's mind about chopping down the banyan tree because the banyan tree is home to lots of animals. Yeah. True. And so this is the entire story. So we have all the different animals and we've done like Zoom has this feature where you can turn people upside down. So we have the 2 bats that come on upside down and stuff like this. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun to do that one. And also just, have these kinds of interactions with kids. Some of them have never seen, forget like Zoom performance. They've not been to a live performance also in their lives. So this was the first time they'd ever seen a play, even though it was, even though it was online, it was their first like experience of anything like that. Yeah. So yeah, it was really quite interesting to just like listen to their questions as well. And
that's beautiful.
See how, it was gorgeous to do it with them. And so smart, like so many of them like just pick up on all of the messages that are there. And it was quite amazing because out of the 100 kids, like you could see the diversity, like a little girl in her hijab, like head covered and like fully covered. And like, then you had this little boy called Om, what's it they're called? Something SOL stands for shout out loud or something. Yeah. But yeah, so we had like this amazing audience of kids from just all kinds of backgrounds. You had Muslims and Hindus on the same show, and they watched this play on their mobile phones. And it was just really exciting to just see how open kids are and how little they think about those things. Because one of the things that has happened, we're trying to market this show to schools as well. Yeah. And get schools to like show it to their kids as something. And a lot of like either, far-right Muslim-run schools or Hindu-run schools have said, oh, because of the title, they refused to take it. Yeah. And they didn't even know what the content was about or anything, but they refused to take it. But on this particular show that was through an NGO to kids across, cultural backgrounds and religions, yeah, they just took it for what it was, which is amazing. This is one of the things that just like always comes back to me is like, unfortunately, our education system is run by a bunch of people that don't even understand children.
Hard out. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Well, that can be said for so many things, right? But I mean, unfortunately, this is right now we're living through a pandemic, and it's clear that if anything has to work, it's what's working for the next generation, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we need to make the biggest changes is how we're impacting the next generation and the way they're thinking about things. And unfortunately, still there's these people in charge of that are refusing a new way forward, right? This has always been our struggle, and they're like, oh no, but you people from these creative arts fields, you don't know anything, you don't know how the real world works.
Something I want to ask you, right? I'm going to interrupt you, but like I have to ask you this, like in our cultures, right? Like in Southeast Asia, why don't they respect the artist?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Like really, you're treated like some kind of weird subhuman being that lives for a hobby,
It's like, hey, what do you do? And I make movies.
But what's your real job?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, that's what I do for a living, but yeah, this is the kind of trouble what's one of the reasons why also I decided to work in education and also start the school library project, because for me it's really important that we put a message out that says this stuff matters, right, to because I see it with my own kids. I have 2 children of my own, and I've taught hundreds of children as well. What's the first thing that you pick up? You learn, you naturally can draw, you naturally can dance, yeah. You very naturally have a sense of your own aesthetics, yeah. And we all love telling stories. I mean, that again is very much a part of being human, is the story, right? So when you take those things away from us, what's left, right? There's nothing. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems is that we forgot to tell a good story. Even just the human story itself, right?
Yeah.
Is damaged. And we've just because of this. And I think we get what we deserve in many ways, because we've really forgotten what matters most. And it's time to kind of go back. And unfortunately, on a higher level, people aren't thinking that way. So you do what you can to kind of make changes, and you do what you can to affect the way, people around you think. But it's really unfortunate that it's not happening at a higher level. And especially, I mean, India is not going in a good direction with anything. I don't think on a government level that we've learned anything from this pandemic, So that's something that for me, it's quite hard, because you just feel like sometimes, you're running against a tide constantly. And where, but then you just got to believe that whatever small difference you can make makes a difference, right? So you just have to keep going because of that. One of the sort of bright spots that has happened for all of us that work in education this year is something called the National Education Policy has been released. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And while it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, there is a whole lot in it about integrating the arts into schools. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's actually talking about doing that at every level, not just your privileged schools, even, at a lower sort of government level school. Unfortunately, this policy has been written by somebody who was, part of ISRO India, which is our space research organization, right?
Okay.
So the guy who actually founded the committee that wrote it is part of the space research organization, not really an educator himself, but anyway, I'm sure being like an intellectual himself in some way, he was able to like form a committee, and they made this national education policy, right?
Okay.
And while a lot of it is quite good, there is some of it that is saying, children need to learn everything in their regional language. Okay. Now, I don't know if you understand anything about India, and even Sri Lanka is like this in some ways, I suppose, but every little place has its own language and dialect. Yeah.
Not so much over here. Like we have
so much
three major languages. Yeah. We have Sinhalese, English, and Tamil. And a very small minority speaks Malay, but that's a localized Malay. Yeah. That's about it.
That's about it. But I mean, for us, it's like hundreds of languages you're talking about.
We do have different dialects, though.
Yeah. So if you go into dialects, then you've got even more. But like seriously, it's just too much to be able to do everything. And the other thing is, where you're going to get trained teachers to be able to deliver this in this thing called the National Education Policy for 2020. Yeah. It just says that things have to be taught in a regional language as well, which is, I mean, it's fine in some ways, but I think they haven't thought it through. And the same with the whole policy. I mean, on paper, it all sounds fine. But as an educator right now, okay, hold on a second. Who's training teachers to be able to deliver this curriculum that they want to be able to put into schools now? Because you've now got a workforce of people who are so used to doing things in a particular way, right? And suddenly you're telling them, we can change the Indian education system, but there's no training in place for it. And this is the way India works with a lot of things. And I guess that will happen in any country, but like very much somebody will make a policy, and then on the ground, the schools just then want to tick box the policy,
All right.
So, I mean, it's how most things like, so then suddenly we'll get a call randomly, oh, come and just like do a webinar for us and just talk about integration. Then, and I know straight away, you just want to do this webinar with me because you want to say, oh, yes, we talked about integration. Now we know how to do it. So.
Oh, it just feels so similar.
So I'm like, how are you implementing this in your school? Would you like us to actually come and do a training program? No, we can't afford to do that right now. So, okay. So basically, what are you saying? That after one webinar, you're qualified? So, yeah. What do I say? I mean, on some level, I just have to laugh about it. There's nothing else that you can really do. Otherwise, you get depressed about this stuff.
True.
But yeah, I mean, it's not wonderful in many ways. But I say, at least the policy is now there, right? So, I mean, that's one step in the right direction.
True.
What the rest of us who are kind of working in the arts and doing various things in the arts can now start doing is looking at how we can try and, directly go into schools and say, we'll help you implement this. Yeah.
Okay.
And do it in a good way that's meaningful rather than just ticking a little box to say, I've got this as well. Because now what's happened is in a lot of schools over here, there's all these kids, because I don't know, we have a huge middle class that has spending power. Yeah.
Yeah, we're aware of that.
The pandemic has affected it, but it's still there. Right. So you have a middle class that is growing and they're willing to spend on all kinds of things. Not necessarily wonderful, but like, at least like that means that the kinds of schools that weren't here in the country are sort of opening up, and there's a lot more opportunity to kids that wasn't there before, right?
Okay.
So you have, like, for example, you have your international schools, which offer your IB and your IGCSE, which is Cambridge Board or, whatever. So you have various kinds of international schools that have opened across the country. Unfortunately, you still have the same teacher that was teaching the Indian boards that is now.
Okay, I'm sorry if I, because like we have the same problem, so I see it as a problem. Yeah.
So it's really funny because I go into these schools and I work with these teachers, and then they'll read the curriculum, and then I go into their classes because the program that we run, we actually go and see their classes, like we go and watch what they're doing in class as well. Because we want to try and help give them tools where they can actually deliver this curriculum that sounds like it's not the teacher's fault, actually. Teachers just been chucked in over there because they somewhere again, or this person knows how to teach this subject. They don't have any other training to teach the syllabus that they've been given, but they've been thrown in there. So they're scrambling as well to kind of understand it, because even the language that it's written in is a little bit like alien to them. The context of it, and they don't. And as like people who have learned themselves, that we use this word in education, you don't really say student anywhere more, you say learner.
Okay.
So as somebody who's learned themselves in a particular way, that teachers had no experience of somebody teaching them in a particular way. So it's literally, if I've only ever experienced a teacher standing in the front of the classroom delivering a monologue that doesn't allow for my students to ask me questions, am I ever going to allow my students to ask me a question? No.
True.
So this is where they're coming from. So I can't even blame the teacher, because the teachers never had any other experience. So that is our big sort of issue. So one of the things that we decided to do is make this course where we actually make the teachers experience learning in a different way.
Okay.
So they have to immerse themselves in this learning where they learn with their bodies. They're actually using their voices, they're storytelling in different ways, they're drawing, they're doing things, and they're doing it to like learn other topics and subjects. And so we designed this in a way that the teacher really has to do it themselves before they take it in class.
Okay.
And they have to also think about how to adapt it for their own purposes, right? So we have a whole component on how do you adapt this for what you need to do with it, right? And then we help them with even understanding how to put together a lesson plan that works with these tools.
True.
So, I mean, it's a whole progression, and we've had to pivot. So now the whole thing has moved online.
Okay.
We're doing an online certificate version.
All right.
Because again, everybody in India wants a certificate. I don't understand this.
It's the same over here. All about paper qualifications. It's all about paper qualifications.
Yeah, but it's really funny. Now I do these webinars, and at the end of it, somebody will write to me and say, will I get a certificate for coming for the webinar? I'm like, what are you going to do with this certificate? But we have to give a certificate.
Yeah,
so
it's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So for everything we need a certificate. So yeah. We came up with a quote unquote certificate course. Which is basically, it's worth the certificate more than other things, because we have three workshops on Zoom.
Okay.
And it's spread across 3 weeks. So one per week, because what we do is we give you breathing space in between each workshop. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually try it out in your own practice and feedback to us. Yeah.
Okay.
So we basically set up an online forum with the teachers. So it's 3 workshops. And then in between the workshops, we started kind of a forum for the teachers where they send their feedback about what they've learned in the workshops. And we give them very specific questions to answer during the workshop as well.
Okay.
About how have you adapted it into your class? How did it work for you? Right.
All right.
And they just have to send us a short description. And then on a Google spreadsheet that is open to all the participants from the workshop, we put up what they've sent us along with our feedback. So it almost is like a forum where everybody who is participated in the workshop then gets to see it as well.
Right. Okay.
So it gives them also ideas for what they can do in their own classes. Yeah. So that's how we've been like sort of doing it. And the first one in that series is kind of looking at, because at this time, everybody's kind of social and emotional health is a big one, right?
True.
So the first workshop really works with the teachers on their own social and emotional health. Yeah. Okay. And we really get them to really think about how, like, just using little things from arts-based practices to help them just release whatever's going on with them, to even articulate their own emotions.
True.
Because, we also had to recognize that a lot of these teachers, probably 99% of them are women. Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite rare to have men in schools as well. And usually men are either the music teacher, the physical education teacher, maybe some of the science teachers. But for the most part, especially primary school, you have at least 99% women, teaching. And one of the things that we found is they're all teaching on Zoom. Some of them may not have tech capabilities. They've just kind of been chucked into the deep end with this, either Zoom or Google Meet or whatever it is the platform is.
Okay.
They were not wonderful in the physical space at keeping people engaged and interested. And suddenly they're in the online space trying to do the same. And it's much harder with a child online to keep them interested. Yeah. And of course, these women, they've got families of their own. Working from home is not necessarily, it also comes with its own stresses, because, even the simplest thing, like I may not really want people seeing into my home, right? Maybe I don't live in a place that I want everyone to see as well. So we found that these are kinds of problems that people might face and don't necessarily have anywhere to talk about it as well, right? The other thing, of course, is just being women, they're just handling too many things at once, and people have really high expectations of them, and they're not allowed to ever say that they've got problems. They're not allowed to say that they're feeling upset. Yeah.
True.
Or even angry or anything. You're supposed to be the woman of the family. Nobody cares about your emotions, right? So, yeah. So, that's the sort of kind of space that we said, okay, we need to give them, before we launch them into actually working with them for what they're going to take into the classroom, one of the main things we need to look at is their emotional well-being. Yeah. And we need to give them some like little tools to work on their own emotional well-being, without them feeling overwhelmed. Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things that like these tools work towards is just a sort of, small things, like I might set small goals for myself that are quite attainable. Yeah. Now, usually what happens is when you say you have to make changes, it's quite overwhelming for a lot of people. Like, oh my God, where do I start? Right.
True.
So we take them through exercises that allow them to make just very small changes. And then you can add that to your daily routine because it's not much, right? Okay. And then over time, you'll find that your own emotional well-being starts to improve. And as a result, you can be more stable for those, for your students and also for your own children and everybody around you as well. Yeah. So that's the kind of work that we've been doing online.
That's amazing. So are you catering to India only, or what other countries have you been?
We'd go anywhere. We'd go wherever a school would call us. But of course, mostly now, we've been based out of India. I can't say physically now because right now I'm sitting in the hills in South India. I was living in Mumbai. My colleague who actually started the company with us, a woman called Tasneem Fatehi, she used to also be in Mumbai. And at the beginning of the pandemic, she moved to her husband's family in Bangalore. Yeah. And they live on the outskirts of the city. So again, quite far away from everything and a little bit safer. They kind of live on it's a golf sort of, I don't know what to call it, but it has a golf course and it has like villas and stuff around it. So then it's kind of away from the city. And again, she's able to work from home. Thankfully, with our internet and things have been stable enough for us to continue and do the work. So that is something to be kind of grateful for, because otherwise, if we weren't able to like pivot into the digital, then we would have been stuck, right? But yeah, we've been able to like really make a shift and a pivot. Obviously, everything that we're offering, we've had to slash rates to, super affordable, because again, schools are suffering right now. A lot of parents are not able to pay fees.
True.
So again, schools will not spend what they used to spend. So budgets have been cut massively.
Not just schools, almost every industry.
Everybody, yeah, every single industry, right? So, I mean, we have to also like, whatever we offer is now, it's peanuts compared to like what the work is worth, right? And still people will bargain with us on that as well. So, of course, we're just trying to keep it all floating really at this point, and it's just a daily kind of like, let's keep it all floating. And literally, I've done the equivalent online of standing on a street corner and selling my wares,
All right, I understand. Because it doesn't feel that way though, but yeah, I know what you mean though.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that somewhere. Like we have this Facebook event, for example, coming up, and I've never been one to like, do like little ads and be like, oh, take our stuff. But yeah, so I mean, that sort of thing where you just have to really push yourself beyond your comfort level of being able to do things, and talk about what you do and really hard sell your work, because there's no other way to get it out there, and to actually just get eyeballs on it and say to people, this is worth it. The biggest thing with the work that we do is anytime any teacher or any educator engages with us, or even a parent or whoever it is, they're like, this is amazing. This is really helpful. We need more of this. Yeah.
Okay.
But the problem is the conversation before that to just convince anybody to take it. Is like it's like you get stonewalled on so many levels, and unfortunately, like I know that this is with most businesses, but schools suffer from like once a principal says yes, no, some trustee has to say yes, and then the board has to say yes, and then True. Like it's not as simple as being able to just say, okay, we've got a program, write an email to a principal or pick up the phone and just say, you should take this. It's never that easy. It takes us weeks before a school will even reply to us sometimes, and we have to keep following up. But it's worth it when we finally get through. Like, I mean, over this time or during this pandemic, sitting in my, in this study, or when I was in our bedroom in Mumbai, I was able to work with teachers in places like Varanasi, Surat, Assam, Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, okay.
So like, so I mean, all over the place.
What about Sri Lanka?
Actually, I haven't had any Sri Lankan teachers during this time, surprisingly. We haven't actually had anybody from Sri Lanka. I had one person that was from South America. I think she was from Brazil. And then we've had a couple, I think, from maybe Abu Dhabi. But yeah, we've mostly of course from different parts of India. But even when you say India is like Europe, every state is a different country.
True.
So
I'm yet to experience that, but I've heard that a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be just seriously, Tamil Nadu, where I'm sitting right now, is so different from anything in the north. Yeah. Or even where Mumbai is, Maharashtra is like completely different as well. So, I mean, that we've really had a cross section of teachers. Like we're right now running our 4th batch. So we have also an open batch that we run of the same certificate course that is not direct to schools. We sell that separately to standalone teachers. Yeah. So that our 4th batch right now, I mean, it was amazing because just before when I opened the Zoom room like 15 minutes before we start, and I just ask people, where are you from and what do you do and all of this, just to get to know them before I start working with them. And they were just from such diverse places across the country. One was, we had from Guwahati, which is in Assam, which is the northeast of India. Okay. And then we had Hyderabad, which is like the middle of India. And then, of course, Bangalore, which is in the south. And, we had people from Delhi, which is our capital. And pretty much like they were from the length and breadth of the country by the time I was done with asking everybody where they were from. Yeah. And there's a little collaborative exercise that we do in the middle of it where I actually get them to build a poem together. Yeah. And it was quite amazing to see that, like, by the end of it, because this poem actually gets them to think about their experiences. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, this particular workshop that we were running had people from the length and breadth of the country. And I did this little exercise where we built a poem together, and the poem gets them to think about their own experiences in some way during the pandemic. Yeah. Okay. And it's amazing how, it doesn't matter where people are from at this time, how similar some of, what we're going through personally. Yeah. It's so similar. Okay. Right. So even though you are an individual going through something, there's so much that, we all are feeling and can pick off, what somebody else might say, and we can empathize with each other. Yeah. True. And I think that's one of the big things that this time really has kind of taught me, is this empathy quotient of being able to understand another person. And put yourself into their shoes for a bit. And that's been quite an important part of my work as well, to get people to do that as well.
All right. I had a lot of questions. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about before New Zealand.
Yeah, I did a lot of theatre before I came to New Zealand. But unfortunately, so I used to do a lot of plays. I think I did one short film before I came to New Zealand and acted in it. But yeah, mostly I was on stage. I used to do a lot of work on stage.
All right. So how did you discover South Seas in New Zealand, and what made you come to New Zealand?
Yeah, no, that was so just before I came to New Zealand, about 2 years before, which would have been 2000. Well, the shop itself. So basically in 2000, I lost my dad. And I was about 18 years old when that happened.
I'm sorry, but yeah.
And no, that's okay. It's been more than that time has gone past. But I think what happened was there was a lot of issues that we faced, my mum and me. And maybe you can in some way relate to this, because when you're women alone in India, suddenly all kinds of people kind of swoop in to try and take advantage in various ways.
Yeah, that's very common over here too. So
yeah. So I mean, we had a lot of trouble at that time, and my mum lost a lot of property. And we basically, we didn't have much. And then at some point, also I was not doing very well, because I'd been to an international school before that. I'd been to 2 different international schools where, it was a different level of education, and we were allowed to really question things. And we were allowed a lot of freedom in our education. I'd have to say that I had some of the best teachers. And then I had to go into an Indian college, and I just found that suddenly it really felt like, your wings were somewhere being clipped. Yeah. Because you were told that you were not allowed to ask questions. And when you did question something, or you did, put your hand up and say, no, that's wrong, then you were thought of as being rebellious. Yeah.
Okay.
And not necessarily, encouraged, right? So I really struggled with that. And because I was not one to just take an answer and just go with it, right? I needed proof that, what are you saying? Why do you say that this is how the world works? What proof do you have? Yeah. And I would question a lot of what my professors and my teachers were trying to tell me.
Okay.
And so I had a lot of trouble trying to settle into these systems. And I dropped out of places because I just didn't agree with the way that things were being done. And finally, my mom didn't know what to do. She basically threw her arms in the air and she said, "What do you want to do? Because you just don't seem to, you don't seem to want to do anything with yourself." I said, the problem is not that I don't want to do something with myself. I'm like, I just refuse to allow people to speak to me in a way that they think that they need to have some kind of power over me. Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
So, I mean, I suppose it just never sat right with me. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's probably why I ended up in education to begin with, after my entire journey. Yeah. Because I had various experiences through that college time where you just have this unreasonable adult telling you, and you were already like an adult yourself. You were 18 or 19 or 20, right?
True.
And by that time you were like, no, I'm not going to accept that I just need to listen to you because you're saying so, right? You need to substantiate this, and you need to also allow for a dialogue with me. That's not, I mean, I believe that's where the education is in the dialogue, not by you just telling me things, right?
True.
So this caused a lot of trouble. And then, of course, I was, finally I said to my mom, I said, I don't want to do college. Yeah. I'm not able to fit into any of this. And obviously you can't pay for me to go anywhere. Yeah. So I said, why don't we just figure something out? And I started to work all kinds of odd jobs at that point, Ray. So I worked in an event management. I worked as a radio jockey. I used to do all kinds of things. And then finally, my mom and I decided to start a store together. Yeah. So we started the shop in our home. Yeah. So our house was actually 3 floors. Okay. And the middle floor, we turned it into a shop, and we sold things from a place called Oroville and Pondicherry, where they make a lot of handmade things, and they have a community that, a lot of them are designers.
So handmade crafts and stuff?
A lot of, yeah. So you have a lot of potters, you have a lot of clothing designers and things out there. They make agarbattis, they make, aroma oils, they do, organic peanut butter, all kinds of things, right? Okay. So we sold products from there, and basically I had this sort of almost a 4x4. It's a Toyota Qualis, not quite a 4x4, but it was a big fat Jeep of a car that I would go and pick up our stock from Pondicherry and come back and sell it in Bangalore. And then later we had an agreement with the guy who was supplying and used to get the stuff from there. And then we were selling things in Bangalore from Pondicherry and Oroville. And around that time, there was this education fair that happened. It was a New Zealand education fair. Okay. And my mom just randomly said, listen, why don't you just go? Yeah.
To New Zealand. Okay.
You got nothing. Yeah. She was like, you got nothing to lose. So I said, okay, fine. I didn't really think much of it, but I said, fine. And so I went and I met Sophia and I met Gerben. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we got talking and we really liked each other. So I actually invited them back to the store and back to my house, and they were chatting with me and chatting with my mom. And then Gerben was like, listen, I can help you. If you want to do this, I'll help you out and we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out financially for you as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So Gerben was the one that actually helped me get to South Seas. And Sophia in some way, I guess, also pushed for it to happen. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I think at that point I was like, okay, maybe film is what I want to try doing, because so much theater and I had this. So I thought, okay, maybe it is a place where I can make everything meet. Yeah. But I think also what had happened was I'd had a lot of other kind of trauma in my own personal life before that point where I left as well. And there were many things that had happened to me personally that were quite violent that I hadn't really dealt with. And during the time where my mom and me were, fighting for property, and a lot of things had happened that were quite scary. There were not, to me personally, where, there was a lot of abuse involved as well. Yeah. So I was unstable, and I didn't recognize it. Yeah. And I guess I left for New Zealand in a way that I was kind of unstable. And something sort of came to the forefront over there while I was away. Maybe I wasn't like dealing with it when I was at home, because I just had, I had the support around me, and I was able to like kind of be an ostrich and put my head in the sand about things a little bit. Yeah.
True.
But when I was on my own, then suddenly my coping mechanisms all kind of diminished, and I started to, I guess I had the equivalent of some kind of a breakdown when I was there. Yeah. And acted out in ways that left me not able to, like concentrate on what I was doing. And I just felt like, I was not able to finish what I started over there as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's basically one of the reasons why I suppose, I did decide to leave. Yeah. And also I think I also acted in a way that was harmful to myself. Yeah. And I started to do things that were kind of harmful to me and my own emotional health. Yeah. So I suppose I began to scare myself in some ways, right?
I understand.
And that's the point where I decided I had to leave film school as well. And then there was also the question of, was this really what I set out to do?
Okay.
Yeah, what I want to do as well. Yeah. I guess being the sort of person that I am, that I have so many things that I could possibly do.
True.
Unless it sits right and it feels like I was somewhere, it sounds silly, but somewhere I feel like I was made to do certain things. Yeah.
Where was this, in New Zealand?
No, this is generally with my life,
With your life.
like
all right. Okay.
with my life itself. So, I feel like when I'm not engaged with things that, I feel comfortable with, or there's any kind of discomfort, I feel like, this is not helping me connect the next dot in my life, then I suppose I give up on it, which may or may not be a good thing. I don't know. Yeah. But in retrospect, if I think about it, everything that I learned at South Seas, I'm using now.
True. I totally agree.
I edit a lot of the videos that go up on the school library project myself. Yeah.
Excellent.
And and I mean, even my work with like, the drama school, and, when we've done various workshops, I've actually been the person who does a lot of the photography.
I was going to get into that. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, whatever skills I picked up, I'm using now. Yeah. So I guess in some ways, nothing is wasted, right?
True. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So that is kind of, that's how things sort of happened with South Seas. And when I decided to leave, I did go to Gerben and I said, listen, I'm not going to be able to finish. And he had a very long conversation with me. And I have a lot of time for that man, Ray. He's an incredible human being, because
he
I
definitely
think
is.
he really hears you. Yeah. And he said to me, I just think that you came in a way that, you came to New Zealand in a way that perhaps I had something to do with that, and I might have pushed you to come for a film course. He was like, I think you need to find what you do best.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was the one that was like, I hope that you go back and you find what you do best, because I think you'll really excel at whatever it is. Right.
True.
And he's like, I can see that you have so many skills and so much to give. And you shouldn't let go of that in stopping doing the course. Right. And so then when I came back also, I guess I never really stopped thinking about what this is. And when I started working in education, it just felt like that's where I was supposed to be.
All right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not about like a lot. There's this old saying, if you can't do, you teach. But actually, for me, it's the opposite. Because of my experiences with educators,
Mm-hmm.
I think people who need to do the most are actually people who work in education. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. True.
So that's why, for me, it really does matter to be here and doing what I do, to actually work with teachers and try and make some kind of difference with teachers. Yeah. Because that's the only way kind of forward for me personally. It's like, and in some ways it's an art form in itself. When I teach, things come to me, like I'm able to connect dots for people, and it does somewhere feel like artistry. Yeah.
True.
So yeah, this is why I do what I would do. And I guess New Zealand in some way was a pivot in my life. It didn't go how I thought it would, and it didn't go according to like whatever, what was planned out.
All right.
But I think definitely it had something to do with, me actually finding what meant most to me.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
I know a lot of girls who they've gone through similar experiences like you, but their own version. What do you want to tell people out there? People who are currently experiencing similar things that you experienced back in 2006, 2007. How can you motivate them?
Well, it's hard because when you're in the middle of something, that's when you're least motivated, right? And I think it just takes that one voice to make a lot of difference, or a combination of people around you. I think one of the main things is to not cut yourself off from people, right? I think one of the most detrimental things that I've ever done in my life is to think that I've done something wrong.
Okay. All right.
And as a result, kind of cut your ties with people who could be your friends.
True.
Right? Because you feel ashamed maybe to look people in the eye. Yeah. Because you think people are judging you. Actually, nobody is judging you apart from yourself.
True.
Right?
Because no one have time for that, right?
Exactly. I mean, there was a time when my sort of like my inner demons, let's call them, for lack of a better word, but those voices in your own head, I would listen to them to the point where I would walk into the room and I would think that people, are looking at me funny because of just the way I look, or, I'm not really engaging in the conversation, so they must think I'm boring, or I've got nothing to offer. Why am I here? Yeah.
Okay.
So
You've gone through those kind of thoughts too? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But all these kinds of thoughts. And then suddenly I kind of realized, I'm like, you know what? I'm the one having these thoughts. Nobody even knows me when I first walk into the room. Yeah.
True.
It's like when you go to a party, right? And you're just like awkwardly standing there. You don't know how to engage with people. And you're just thinking, oh, I must be the weirdest person here. Nobody really wants to like engage with me, right? And then I just realized, I was like, no, actually, it's just you who's stopping yourself from engaging with everybody. Yeah. And it's your own head. And it used to get really quite bad, and it would stop me from doing many things. Yeah. And because like so many things came to the surface, I remember one day, because of course South Seas is in North Shore, and you remember our apartment that the girls all lived together in that sort of shared house.
Yes.
And I was down in the basement, right? And I remember one day trying to do my shoelaces up, and just like my whole, because what was going on with my head was so loud that I couldn't actually do my laces because my entire body started kind of shake, and I just couldn't do up my own shoelaces. And I just, simple little things used to become so like difficult to finish. Yeah. Because everything in my own head was so loud. and kind of clamoring inside there. And I just didn't know how to deal with that. Yeah.
Okay.
And the truth was, it was just things that I hadn't actually looked at and that I'd locked up, and a lot of hurt and a lot of pain that I hadn't actually addressed. Yeah. And I think one of the main things, if you are going through these things, is you've got people around you and you can seek professional help, which is what, I mean, eventually I went to a counselor, but even before that, just the act of saying it out loud. Yeah. Just to try and articulate what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is just the first step, because often it's just not being able to say things and just feeling like, oh my God, if I tell people, it'll sound stupid. Yeah. Don't worry about it feeling stupid. Just say it. Yeah. Nobody's going to actually judge you apart from you.
True. I can agree. 100%.
Yeah.
So coming back to marriage, how did marriage and then having kids, how did that all add up into your life, and how did that?
Yeah. Well, my husband and myself, there was a point where I thought we would never get married, Ray. So we lived together for the longest time. So I guess I met him in 2006 when I came back from New Zealand. And that was at a theatre festival that a friend of ours gets us to volunteer for and do a lot of free work for him. And both of us, actually, this theatre festival is a youth theatre festival, and only for people up to the age of 25. Yeah.
Okay.
But both of us were older than 25 by that stage. And I was actually doing all of the art decor for them. So this is like a huge theatre in Bangalore called Rangashankara. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's got the foyer is this massive space. And basically, I had to decorate this entire foyer by myself.
Okay.
And they had zero budget to do it. Yeah. Okay. And so I had all of my art supplies and a ladder and one person just kind of trying to get all of this stuff up to make it look like a festival. Right.
Okay.
And my husband was doing he was teaching he was teaching light design, I think. Yeah. So he was working inside the theater and teaching people lighting design. Yeah.
Okay.
Because as well as being a director, he's also a lighting designer.
All right.
And now he's an entrepreneur. Go figure. But
that's
anyway,
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, so I just kept seeing him walking around with his laptop bag while I was slogging away, trying to make this entire theater look like a festival. Yeah. And then at some point, we had to move a whole bunch of bags from one area to another because some guest speaker was coming in. And everybody's bags were in the way, and he picked up one bag and moved it. And I was like, oh, wow, you actually do work,
Okay. All right.
So that was the beginning of our conversation. Yeah. And then, then there was these banners that I was doing because that year their symbol was a foot. Yeah, because the whole thing was they made a logo that looked like a foot, and underneath it said break a leg, because that's what you say in the theater before somebody does a show, right?
Okay.
So then I basically had dipped my feet into blue paint, and I had these massive strips of yellow material, and I was putting blue footprints on these pieces of yellow material that I was then hanging as these banners across the whole theater. Yeah. And he came up and he was like, oh, you have a pronated instep, I was like, what are you talking about? What does that even mean?
Okay.
So yeah, that was the beginning of it. And I was like, who is this guy that just goes around saying strange stuff to people? And then, so then that was the beginning of it. And then I accused him of being lazy and not doing much. And then, we got talking while the very boring speaker was speaking. And that was sort of the beginning of everything. And then we kind of kept in touch with each other, but we weren't really like, anything. Then I moved to Mumbai when I was working in ad films, and we sort of became, I suppose, what they call friends with benefits, Ray, for a while. We kind of saw each other, but we had like other people in our lives as well, but we weren't exclusive. And my lifestyle and my life was just too busy to actually have any kind of boyfriend at that time. So it wasn't like I was committed to anything. But at some point it started to get a little bit more serious. Yeah. And just at that point, he turned around and he was like, you're not the kind of woman that I'm really looking for. Okay. And that's the point where I was like, okay, well, anyway, I've decided. I was thinking about leaving the city and going and doing something, in the far reaches of Tamil Nadu. So see you later, And then he was one of the few people that I kept in touch with when I disappeared from everybody else. And then he came and he visited me in Tiruvannamalai while I was running the cafe and the restaurant.
Okay.
And then I moved back to Bangalore. We were talking about, by the time like I lost my job teaching drama in the school in Bangalore, he was like, why don't you start applying to places in Bombay as well? And I did, and I got a job, and he was already with our colleague Tasneem. He was getting another friend of ours to go and teach at another school. So then he said to me, if we put the two schools together and you go and teach at both of them, we can have a program. Yeah.
Okay.
And originally I was supposed to do that, and I was supposed to live in another friend's house. And I literally stayed at that other friend's house for 2 days. And then I moved in with him. And then that was around 2009, April, that I moved in with him.
Okay.
And then we've lived together ever since.
All right.
2011, December, on Christmas Day, we got married in this house where I am in Kunur. And because his grandparents have a home up here, and I come from this part of the world, so we decided to get married over here. And then we decided to have kids as well,
So what's it like to be a mom?
I have a 6-year-old and I have a 2-year-old.
Beautiful. What's it like to be a mom now?
Well, you're never like, I don't think this is something you're ever prepared for, Ray. It just kind of like it just, when it happens, it's you deal with it. And it's wonderful. And some days you feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I swimming in the sea? And when everybody is shouting and screaming at the same time and having meltdowns, then you're just like, oh my God, can I just not bury myself in a hole? But then they are also the most wonderful human beings that you will ever meet as well. And they have that ability.
I want to see them someday, all of you guys. So
yeah. No, my kids are amazing, actually. I have 2 incredible children, and my little boy, Aiden, is the smartest guy that you'll ever meet. And he's just so thoughtful and so sensitive. And my daughter, her name is Zaya, and sometimes it's a Tibetan name, and it means woman who wins, or victorious woman.
Nice. All right.
Seriously, there's no like not winning against her.
Okay, so she's living up to her name.
Yeah, totally. She is like feisty, and she'll give anybody a run for their money, and she can just, she can really make you do things she has power.
All right. Were they schooling before the pandemic, or were they homeschooled?
So my son was, and he was going to, I don't know if you know what a Steiner school is, like these Waldorf schools.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have 3 Steiner schools in Mumbai, and he was going to the one that was closest to us. I mean, the reason is that I can't afford the international schools, to tell you the truth. They're so exorbitant. And I would probably have to sell my kidneys or something to put him there.
I can understand. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, then apart from that, you have like the regular schools, which I just didn't want to do because they make kids like do homework in grade 1. And I just don't believe in that kind of schooling,
True.
So we decided to put him into this Steiner school, which, I mean, it actually worked out pretty well for us, I have to say, because even though some of it I don't necessarily agree with, as an educator myself sometimes, but I do have to say the teachers themselves, they really do care. And through this pandemic, they made a decision not to go online for the little kids.
All right.
So they send us they send us a PDF of activities. And so that's about 32 pages every week. And when we're in Bombay, then we get a kit and then we do the activities with the kids. But now that I'm not in the city, then they send me an email or a message to say what I have, like resources I have to keep ready for the week.
Okay.
So yeah, along with work, I'm also a homeschooler.
All right. my kids are homeschooled, so yeah, that's why I asked you that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now I'm homeschooling. Truthfully, Ray, I'm quite happy for school starts again because I don't know if I was cut out to, even though like I'm happy to work in education, I think my own children should go to somebody else.
I understand. Okay.
Just so that everybody stays sane.
All right.
But, yeah. My daughter, we tried because the little play school that she was going to go to, they said, they're going to do Zoom classes and you pay every month. So I tried 1 month of it. And then I called up the teacher and I was like, listen, I just can't manage. I'm just doing one too many things. I think I can afford for her not to do school. She's only 2 years old. So
I understand.
when school opens, we'll send her. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Any advice for young parents who are homeschooling, like me, my wife, and our family? Like, we're used to it, right? We know how to run the show. But for a lot of parents, this was unexpected. Homeschooling is not for everybody. But right now, everyone is technically, but everyone's kind of homeschooling right now. So
one of the things I think with the homeschooling is it's important to have some kind of schedule for yourself, not just for the kids, but for you as a family. Like, I understand that's quite hard. Like for me, for example, it is quite hard because I don't have fixed working hours. Yeah. And neither does my husband. So whenever the work is there, I have to be online. But I found that at least if I put some kind of schedule in, even if it's a loose one, it becomes a bit easier for both me as well as Aiden. So if I say, to him every day at 10 or 10:30, you have to come and then we'll do our homeschool together. Yeah. And I have to just keep my schedule clear during that time as much as possible. Yeah. So that is one thing that you can, as a parent, kind of do, is like keep to a regular schedule. And just remember, kids are always better in the morning, right? So if you want to try and get schooling in, the morning is probably the best time to do it with them. Yeah.
True.
Rather than trying to do it at any time in between stuff.
That doesn't really work so well. True. Yeah.
There's this wonderful book that's called The 13 and a Half Lives of Captain Blue Bear. Yeah. And it's by a German author called Walter Moers. Yeah. But it just talks about this bear who has these various lives. It's actually it's one of those books that looks like it's for children, but it's actually for adults. Right.
All right. Okay.
And it just has all these different lives that he lives. And I kind of feel a little bit like him because, my life has all these different episodes.
I got to check it out. And, it would be nice if you can encourage the Sri Lankan parents to, start following your page and what can they expect?
Like, sure, if you
let's
can help
build
us
some
with
curiosity.
that kind of stuff.
That is my intention.
I don't have an inroad. Wonderful. What I will do, Ray, is I will share everything with you because we're on Facebook. We have a website. We're on Instagram as well. Yeah. And right now we actually have an event coming up that is being done in collaboration with Facebook.
Okay, excellent.
And it's designed for parents and educators, both. So it's actually for parents because we know that parents are actually homeschooling right now. And it does talk about this whole, how can you help both you and your kids in this during this time through arts-based activities, like really work on your social emotional health, and also just improve the relationship between you and your child by doing certain activities with them. Yeah.
Nice. All right.
So that is coming up on the 18th, if I'm not mistaken, of this month. Yeah.
Okay.
But I can share all of the details with you as well.
Please do. Please do. And about the links the listeners can follow.
Yeah, so there's Theatre Professionals Education on Facebook. That is one. And we're just called Theatre Professionals on Instagram.
All right.
And the same, our website is, if you look up Theatre Professionals Education, you'll find our website as well. Yeah. And of course, there's the School Library Project, which is on all three platforms.
Well, I'm familiar
it's on YouTube.
With so.
Yeah. That's on YouTube, that's on Instagram, and that's on Facebook as well. And you'll have to look it up on the platform, not on Google.
All right.
Because since we're free, we don't have the Google visibility. So it's the School Library Project.
And how can teachers or schools or principals or parents, how can they contact you, like from Sri Lanka and, network?
Well, I mean, if from Sri Lanka, if they just send us a message on any of our platforms, or there we have an email, which is schools@theatreprofessionals.co.in.
Okay.
We will reply to them, and we can start a dialogue with them about, what they can do in their schools as well.
Excellent. And any advice for the parents and teachers?
One of the things that I have told a lot of people during this time is we don't have to catch up during this pandemic. Yeah, and quite the opposite. We can take time to slow everything down a little bit. I think that holds true, especially for educators, because unfortunately, a lot of schools are scrambling to, make sure that everything is delivered how it was in the physical space. And grade 1 has to finish by, whenever, and grade 2 also has to finish. Don't worry. Yeah,
that's a big problem over here in Sri Lanka too. A lot of parents and teachers, they're worried about age and all that, exams, age, and what's going to happen to my kid. He's going to be so much years old when he's doing his O-levels, A-levels, or scholarship program, and they're all confused right now.
I think one of the main things is, like, when my husband and I, when we first came into lockdown in India, we actually talked about just taking a gap year for our son as well. Yeah.
All right.
To just stop going to school for a year. But I think somewhere, if every school across the planet, forget like just Sri Lanka, but like if every school decided, let's just slow down, right?
True.
It's not going to make a difference, because every child would have taken things a little bit more slowly, right? And I think you have to realize this, because unfortunately, your parent is not a teacher. And even in this kind of online medium, you do need the help of a parent to ensure that it's happening properly, right?
True.
So, and the other thing is, putting a child in front of a computer for 4 hours a day is just not healthy.
True.
Yeah?
I totally agree with that. So you have to
realize we can't cram school into this time. We have to just allow for the fact that, okay, it's going to be a different time. Let's just slow down. What's going to happen to a whole generation of people if they just slow down a little bit? Nothing.
Yeah. But a lot of damage can happen if they don't.
So I think that's my main thing, is I just hope that people realize we're not racing against anything. In fact, the opposite. We need to stop racing. Yeah.
How do you see the future? Like with the current pandemic, it looks like, lifestyles have changed and some of it is going to stay with us. So how do you see the future?
So I think, definitely we will continue to work in the digital and be online for many things. For example, the work that I do now, I'm able to collaborate. Like, I've worked with people in different countries. I'm able to have this conversation with you as well, which we wouldn't have thought of before, right?
Yeah.
So in that way, this kind of working in collaboration across countries without borders, I hope that stays for sure.
True.
what I don't really want is for that unnecessarily being tied to our screens, though. Yeah. Because I
Yes.
think that is kind of taking a lot away from us. I think you have to really factor in that we need to do things physically. And this is one of the things that I learned when I was at South Seas. I don't know, Ray, if you remember, we went to the Maori land one
Yes, I
day.
do. I do. I do
And they did
remember
the
that.
whole, yeah. And that was
Hmm.
quite a powerful thing for me because, I mean, at that point, it really made me think about the importance of the land. Yeah.
True, true, true.
And I think during this pandemic, one of the main things that we need to all kind of do is connect to the land that you're from. Yeah.
True.
Or the land that you stand on.
Hmm.
Right. And by that, I mean the actual earth that you stand on.
Hmm.
Yeah. And sitting in front of a screen is not going to help you do that. Yeah. You need to get your kids outside, get
Hmm.
yourself outside. Yeah.
Hmm.
And you need to do things that are not detrimental
Hmm.
to everything around you. Yeah. But
Hmm.
things that will give you some kind of peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's go for a bike ride, go for a run. Yeah.
True.
Dig in the garden,
Hmm.
do that will actually allow you to connect to everything around you. So I think that's one of the things that can really help people as we move forward is find ways to really connect back to the earth itself. Yeah.
True. Around 80% of parents get away from their kids by handing over a device. They just escape
Yeah. Yeah.
and tend to do whatever they want to do. I personally see this as something extremely harmful, and the next generation is going to suffer for this. How can we reduce this?
Well, it's just about engaging kids. I mean, even I am sometimes guilty of it. Like I can tell you, when we had to travel up here or whatever, and I had to make sure that my kids kept the mask on while we were on the plane and all of that. I did use a device. Yeah. But that's the point is like, I'm not saying don't use it.
Mm-hmm.
Use it by all means, but don't overuse these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to remember that at every point, children and people as well, you need to make certain rules for everybody in the family. Like, for example, in our home in Mumbai, we say that we don't allow devices in the bedroom. Yeah.
All right.
So everybody has to leave it on the counter and you're
Mm-hmm.
not allowed to take it into the bedroom. Yeah.
Excellent.
You're
Okay.
allowed to use it in the sort of common areas of the house
Mm-hmm.
in our apartment, but you can't take it into the bedroom. And that really helps us. And the other thing that we did was we decided not to have a television. Yeah.
We don't have a
And
television too. We do have
yeah.
screens,
So
but we don't
we
watch
have
traditional
screens, but
television.
I
Yeah.
think not having a TV, because see, the TV is one of those things that just gets left on. Yeah.
True. And I hate
And
that. Yeah. I don't like
like
the
I
word
walk
hate,
into
but
a lot of people's houses, the TV is just on for no
it
reason.
just runs and they're
Yeah.
used to it and they're so
Yeah.
used to it. They want
Yeah.
to hear it.
Exactly. And it's just running all the time. So I think if you just decide just switch off the TV if you have one, yeah, and have times when you don't have any screens on. The other one, of course, for a big one for me, is make sure that there are no screens at meal times. Families need to eat together. Yeah.
True. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think it's little places where you can make rules. Yeah.
True.
Of course, I have very like strong rules with my kids. You don't have to be as like harsh about it, but like I don't allow for like more than half an hour screen time in a day for them.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless like I need to like, unless it's an exception.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, of course, I use screens for things like if it's a class, then I allow it. For example, my son, he still does capoeira, so he was doing capoeira classes when he was it was like an after school class that he was going to, and of course, pandemic hit and he couldn't go to capoeira class anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he does that online, and he
All
does a
right.
yoga class online. So I think if it's physical activity for especially for little children, then it's still kind of okay as long as they're kind of interacting with an adult who's getting them to do something physical, right?
Okay. Mm.
But I think when it's passive, when they're just sitting and kind of like watching, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then that becomes that becomes what is detrimental to them, because they're just sitting over there, and then slowly, like, you can tell, like with my little one, my 2-year-old, when my mom is around, my mom finds it very hard to not have screens on. Yeah. She's with us right now, and my mom will just put on any kind of junk onto her tablet and show it to my daughter. Really bad mood, and she starts to have like tantrums, and she starts screaming, and I can't understand why. And then, I'll just ask my mom, I'm like, was she on a screen for a bit? And it turns out that, yeah, she was. So I can see it even like in my 2-year-old, that the screen puts her in a bad mood. And then she has this whole thing where if you don't give it to her, she'll have a tantrum.
Okay.
Yeah. So my way of dealing with it is just to take it away completely at that point. Yeah.
This was a wonderful episode, and we learned a lot.
Thank you.
The listeners are going to learn a lot from this. So I'm looking forward to having you as a guest in the future. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm wishing you all the best with everything you're doing. And yeah.
Thank you so much. You take care as well.
You take care too. All right.
Bye.
Bye.